Harvey Lewis, what are you doing here, mate? You're in Australia at Dead Cow Gully.
What an honor, man. It is so amazing to be here right now. I'm psyched.
Well, what are your first impressions, mate? Because you had a layover in San Francisco. Pretty frustrating. You were there for, 24 hours, 26 hours. Then you fly into New Zealand for a few days. And then, boom, you're in Brisbane. And you drive out to Dead Cow Gully. What are your initial impressions of Australia and country Queensland?
Yeah, just absolutely. It's a unique place on the planet. The community, the sense of community is very strong. It definitely has a rural feel to it. Like I live half the time in a city and half the time in a rural area for Ohio. And this area would be sort of comparable to that rural area I live in Ohio in the sense of but probably even less population here.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
so it's kind of amazing to just the amount of territory and just how few people live in this big continent. And coming into Brisbane was one of the prettiest cities I've seen. Like honestly, it felt like just exotic. Like I can't say the sun like California, all this like great tropical plants and that sort of flowers and things, but it just like I love seeing the Gold Coast.
So you saw that from the air as you were coming in?
Yeah, as we were coming in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was really nice. And then just like landing, interacting with people. Aussies have a great energy. Yeah, great zest for life. So it's, when I'm traveling around the world, I actually meet a lot of Australians and I think that, per capita, you guys travel in the top people on the planet.
Quite a bit.
Going all over.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So it's just fun. Yeah, this morning we went over to Narango and I got to go into the fruit and veggie, little store there. And speak with some locals, and that was fun.
And it's surprising you actually had some vegan options at the local store, which, for a small country town, you don't really think there's a whole lot of availability, but you're stocked up. You bought half the store.
Yeah, we bought half the store. They were wondering how many weeks we were staying or what kind of crazy event was happening out here. But there was anything that we really would have needed, we could get right here in town. You don't have to drive 30 minutes away. So it's just very personable, quaint and personable,
that's great.
The little town. I like that aspect.
That's great, mate. Yeah. So I knew through conversations with you, you've got some relatives in Cairns, I believe.
Yeah.
And when's the last time you were in Australia?
Yeah. So my last time in Australia was 1995.
Wow.
Yeah, I was here for we had this school for field studies, and we were doing sort of research as college students in Queensland, the rainforest area. And so that goes back 27, 28 years. It's hard to believe. And then my Aussie cousin, we actually met up in Auckland earlier this week, and I hadn't seen him in over a decade. And he's someone who I love dearly, is a good friend to me. So we've shared a lot of adventures, and it's just great to reconnect. And I have another Aussie cousin by marriage, Sam Dennis, who's going to be coming out to the race. And
really?
Yeah, he lives in Brisbane with Michelle, and I haven't seen them in probably 6 or 7 years.
And how cool.
So that's so nice that they're making a journey over here.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And so back in 1995, were you running back then? This is almost 30 years ago.
Yeah.
You were running a bit?
I was running the ultras actually came off the heels of Australia. So I actually I did an ultra the very next summer. So it was a year, or it was your winter. I was here in June of 95, and I did my first ultra a year after that in June of 96. So, but when I was here, I was still a runner. I ran marathons. I usually do one marathon a year. And I would just get out. I wasn't as disciplined as I am now to run as frequently and as far as I do. But back then I would run probably 3 or 4 days a week. And I was just like, I really enjoyed running. In fact, I like would run with the cows. I said like that was really something I vividly remember was that experience, because we were near like some farm acreage and stuff like that.
This is up
too.
in Cairns.
In Cairns.
Gotcha.
Yeah. A place called Youngbury.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So that's amazing. So about 30 years ago you were here, and then the next year you did your first ultra. Yeah. And as it turns out, tell me if I'm wrong, will this be your 100th ultra at Dead Cow Gully?
I wasn't planning that when you invited me back in like October, or maybe even the end of September last year. I had no idea that this would actually like matriculate to be the 100th ultra for me. But that is the truth. Like I didn't know where it was going to come out, because I had like a number of events like Barclay that I wasn't really sure, if I'd get into that, and like how other races I did. And I didn't know if it would end up being Badwater, which is in July, or some other race. But I'm grateful that it actually came out this way, because it's so exciting to come out here. You got a great like field of runners from New Zealand, all across all parts of Australia, and to come sharing this basically like running festival almost in a way is such a party to me.
Yeah, mate. Well, you're a big part of it, because once you came on board, everyone else stepped into line. So you were the big selling point.
I don't know about that. I think it was no your hospitality, Tim. Are you kidding me? Like, mate. You've grown quite a reputation.
Well, I appreciate that.
I can see what you do. You put a lot of good energy into what you're doing.
Oh, thanks, man.
It's true.
Now, buddy, in all seriousness, like when I look at you, one word that comes to mind is time management. Like I'm just trying to work out the maths, how you actually pull this off. So you've got a full-time job as a secondary teacher. You're basically, you're a professional athlete. So you're training, you're going to events all around the US and internationally. Plus you've got your Instagram, so you've got the social media thing, you're making documentaries. And then you've got to have a private life.
Yeah, my fiance's.
I mean, how do you
Kelly's
pull it
gonna
off?
get a little feisty about all that.
How do you pull it off? Like, I just don't know. I'm just trying to work out the maths.
Yeah, it is. During the school year, it's like I actually come to these races sometimes. I was like, wow, I feel like relaxed. It's much easier to just focus on running, versus like running to school and getting the lesson plans ready and grading a bunch of like assignments. And because you were a teacher too. That's pretty amazing. Both your parents teachers as well.
That's true.
That's such a cool thing. So the teaching takes a lot of energy, but I get a lot of positive return from my students too from that. And I don't watch a lot of TV. Like just like my norms. I like shows, I like movies, but I don't watch like a lot. Like I don't have a TV in the city house.
Have you watched your documentary?
I have watched that. Yeah. So it's in the summertime. This is like actually more relaxed mode, because I don't have any responsibility with teaching right now, so I can focus on those things, or my passion projects, and coming out to adventures like this even more. You
seem to be very efficient with your time. Like you do the run commute to work, and you've done this for how many years?
Now it's 10 years. Yeah. So that really helps out a lot, because it helps because it makes me accountable. Like, people do really well with having some system of accountability, whether that's you have a coach, or you have an errand to run, or you come up with something in your mind as a system. But for me, it's just automatic. Like I don't even have to wrestle with it. Like I remember hearing like a podcast with David Goggins where he was like, he's super inspiring, and he was talking about how he just was hating to run, and he was so he like looked at his shoes for like an hour before he ran this one time. He got out there and did it, because he does always tackles those tough things. But with running to work and back, I don't even think about those things, because it's so automatic. Now when I'm going out if I'm off from work and it's like a day off, And I like don't get out the door like, 7, 8 a.m., 10 a.m. I'm cleaning, doing some work. Then it's like 11, 1 p.m. Then I'm like sitting there, I'm thinking a little more about, I got to get out there and do this run. So I have those moments too. But with the run commute, it's really like automatic to me. Like it's like driving a car. Like I just have to do it. So,
and you're hitting two birds with one stone.
Yeah.
Because you have to get to work.
Right.
And I guess when you're gearing up for a big event, do you take alternative routes to stretch out the Ks?
Exactly. So
the miles, I should say.
It depends. Like if I'm in a taper or recovery from a race, it's like just the minimum. But otherwise, especially when I'm building up to a race, I'll go, add an extra like, maybe 10, 15K, one way, and then the other way coming back, the same. And I'm always running with a backpack too.
I see that.
So it's like, that's just normal.
Textbooks or weights?
No, it's like back in the day we had the textbook. Now it's like my laptop, my lunch, my like change of clothes, just like those types of things for teaching.
So how many, well, I guess you think in miles. I'm thinking how many Ks from your house to the school?
It's only like 5K.
5K.
Yeah, that's it. So
but that's consistent there and back.
It's there and back. It helps just that consistency,
Yeah. So just doing that, you do 50 Ks a week, just doing that.
Yeah, just that.
Just that.
Yeah, just that.
And do you have a shower at work? Like, do you?
No, I just like literally like change my clothes, put on fresh clothes. No one ever says anything. I've run into president before.
Have you?
Yeah. Right in the park next to our school. But I've had like the mayor come in and speak, and the Congress members or CEOs, whatever. No one's ever said anything. Yeah. So I honestly it's kind of like if you're living in a big city like Sydney or New York, and you're like commuting, just walking like 2 or 3 kilometers to work. I mean, I don't know. People do that in New York, and they might you might be a little sweaty from that, but just wipe down with a towel, put on nice fresh clothing, no issue.
Dead Cow Gully is one of the most talked about events on the running calendar. 6.7 Ks each hour, every hour, until the last one is standing. We're located on a 1,600-acre working cattle property, and we've called this place home for about 150 years. We would love for you to come out and check out the action. But last year, we sold all the tickets in about 14 hours, so you need to get in quick to secure your spot. Tickets will go on sale this year at 6 p.m. September 25. Lock in this date, 6 p.m. September 25. You can register through our website, deadcowgully.com.au, or on our Facebook or Instagram page. Thank you.
Do you have any issues like are you running in traffic? Because you're in a built-up area. Like I do see you out on these sort of remote country roads, but
right.
I guess. Yeah, what's it like running in traffic? And I guess people would know you; they'd be waving at you and saying hello.
Yeah, it's kind of neat. Like our city's maybe the city center is like 360,000 people, but we have like 2 million in the outlying area. And I do almost see someone at least every other day that say, yell out Harvey, yell out their car or something like. And so it's kind of a small area. I have kind of gotten to know people, and but yeah. Fortunately, like Cincinnati was established back in like the mid 19th century. So it's like it was initially established as like a pedestrian city. It's actually famous for having 400 sets of staircases. Wow. Like got like it's known as like the city of 7 hills. Yeah. It is. So it has a lot of sidewalks, and I have zero issue whatsoever like with commuting. It's so easy. Now we are not as good as some of the cities that have really like expanded like bicycle, like pedestrian, walkways, even more. But we're doing pretty well on it. And I mean, there's only a couple intersections that are like I'm always just kind of more aware when I'm like going across them. But it's really super simple, very easy.
So you could do stair climbs as a part of your training as well.
Oh yeah. That's always kind of helped me in Cincinnati because a lot of people are like, well, how did you win Badwater, or how did you do really well in this race that has all this climbing, or how did you finish the Appalachian Trail, all those things that like inquire like vertical. Cincinnati is like, it's not big. Like we have no mountain, but we have hills that are like 340 feet. So it's not that big, but if you string them together and you do enough of them, you can get as much vert as you dream. So it's still not ideal. Like for Barclay, I have that's a race I have not mastered yet, of course. It's a very intense race. I love the challenge and like the whole aspect that really pushes your mind, because you have to really be so focused with your thinking, and you have to do you have to solve puzzles continuously. Like there's always puzzles. You're always solving a puzzle the entire race. So you cannot just turn your brain off. Yeah. Like in this race, we can like really get into like a sort of outer body sort of zone where you just, I have to look a little bit like closer, with the gravel or stones or ups and downs. I'm sure I'm going to fall down like a few times. It's just natural. I don't mind, no big deal. Usually I fall down when I'm like, my mind's wandering. But it's nice to kind of like be in this experience too, where you can like just get into that running zone that you can't get into that sort of thing in Barclay, because you have to be so super alert and present at all times. Like, I mean, you're running through a dense forest looking for a rock to make a right, where you're going to see a little plastic pipe and you go down the hill. Like it's like, so you're constantly scanning and thinking what's coming.
Do you think that's where people come unstuck? It's the orienteering and trying to do that when you're fatigued. That seems to be like people come into it at the peak of physical fitness. Yeah. They've done some amazing events. They may have had some podium finishes, and they come in feeling quite confident. But it just seems, if you don't have the orienteering and if you can't make decisions 40, 50, 60 hours in,
right,
your physical strengths almost mean nothing at the end of the day at Barclay, don't you think? You can only get so far.
It's destroyed a lot of people. I mean, really, there's been some of the runners, they've never announced that they're even there, because they, like Laz has told me, there's been some runners like they don't want people to know that they even like crashed out, So a lot of runners haven't even finished the first lap.
Lap.
Yeah, which it shows you how difficult it is. Like, I mean, I have a good friend in the States who's an incredible runner and also incredible outdoorsman. And he struggled both years he was in the race. He with not finishing the first loop and under the time cutoff. He finished the loop, but it was over the time cutoff, and he is so talented. Yeah, it's like that. Like it's so it is. Laz has definitely created some interesting pieces of art.
Well, is a strategy to latch onto someone who's really good at orienteering and really knows what they're doing, and is that a strategy? Or
that's a brilliant strategy. Yeah, 100%. Like that, especially if you're a newbie, like if you're a virgin, so to speak, like for the race, like it requires even if you're a really good orienteer, they make mistakes. Like, and so when you're in a small pod with people that have been there many times or know the lay of the land, they're not. They may glance at their compass like occasionally, but they're not looking at the map very commonly. They just know it in their head. So it's like such a time saver. This year I navigated the full loop, and I had a 2-3 virgins with me throughout the race in the first and second loop. But I was trying to go a little slower this year because I thought maybe I went a little too fast last year, and I went too slow this year. In the first loop, I think I did in like 10 hours. And then the second loop, I made critical mistakes, like not bringing enough food. I brought a lot of calories, but I didn't realize I was going to slow down. So you need more calories when you slow down. Yeah. And last year, I really, Courtney and I got knocked out because of we didn't find a specific book. That this year I found it like so easily, in the dark, like too. So it's kind of neat. Like my navigation skills balanced up really well. I'm still not, the highest, but it's bounced up a lot. But now I see, well, if I'm going to go back to that race, I really have to go back to the basics of like the physicality, because I was not prepared, I think, physically for the extreme up and down. Like, I mean, you're climbing the equivalent of Mount Everest 2 times. So, I mean, most races in America, even a hard rock, you're talking about, that's some serious climbing, 20,000 feet or something like that. That's a lot of climbing. But to triple that, there's not any like really good, like runnable territory in that race. Like there's maybe 1 mile where you can run for a mile and it's actually flat, but everything else, you're either going up or you're going down the whole way.
And it's off
trail, like largely off trail most of the time. So I need to do more training off trail and like up and down, steeper areas. Like, so that's one challenge of coming from Cincinnati is like, I do have some parks I can access in southern Ohio. But it's like, if you're coming from a place where you can walk out your door and like run up a mountain, it gives you an advantage, in terms of training, than if you have to like drive an hour to find the right hill topography. And, the other thing is a lot of it is, you're walking fast. Like, I mean, no one's running up those hills.
Yeah. So
they're hiking fast.
Yeah.
Power hiking up the hill.
Yeah.
And running down the hill. Now that's kind of crazy. You're running down the hill faster than you ever dream. A lot of times it's very fast, and you're just crashing. Try not to hurt yourself.
How do you possibly prepare for this? Like, I mean, what makes John Kelly so special? What does he actually possess? Where he finished this 2 or 3 times?
Two times now. And we all have specializations. Like, I mean, it's like, I really excel in like extremely hot weather, like Badwater, and other people will get destroyed out there, but where his strength is, well, definitely like he grew up there, so he grew up within eyesight. Like, how this is your family area here, at the Gully. His family, there's a Kelly Mountain, and his family lives right across from like the race. So like that, he has a culture there. He has a history there. So, I mean, it's like he can look at things and say like, I sat with my father there. It's like that inspires you when you're going around. Like, I'd be so inspired if it was my home territory as well.
It's like local pride.
Local pride.
And I guess he would know the geography pretty well.
And he knows the geography so well. Now he's run the race, I think, probably over 5 times, I believe. And he also is someone that, for me, for example, I tend to do all different sorts of ultras. Like, I will do like road ultras, track ultras, mountain ultras, trail ultras, like backyard ultras, stage race ultras. He really, really, really specializes in events that are like multi-day mountain climbing. So he's consistently throughout the year preparing for races that involve mountain climbing. And whereas I might now I'm focused on the backyard ultra or even like Badwater. And then in August, I'm going to the Canadian Death Race, which involves like mountains. And then I'll start to we'll see what happens. But if I return to Barclay one day, I invest a lot of time in climbing, but I need to super invest. So I'm talking is the amount of climbing one has to do to have any chance of being successful there is off the charts. Like, I mean, it's like super off the charts.
Yeah. Is that a bit of a holy grail for you, like the Barclay, because you perform really well at Badwater. You've won multiple times. You've got the US backyard ultra record. You've done really well in all these events, but most people who line up for Barclay will fail. That's the reality. Is it sort of, does it kind of play in your mind that it's that what if, because you've excelled in all these different other events?
Yeah.
And I guess have you done 1 or 2 loops at Barclay?
I have come 10 minutes away from finishing the second loop.
Okay.
So I missed the second loop by 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So
do you want to go back and keep giving this a crack, or do you think it's just something you tick off and move on from?
No, I honestly I don't feel a necessity to, that's like my lifelong dream to finish Barclay. Like, I think Aurelien, the French man.
Yeah.
His dream the last 6 years.
Excuse me.
Aurelien, his dream the last 6 years was to finish the Barclay. Like that's everything he dreamed. So for me, like my biggest goal this year is to go and honestly be my biggest goal would be go after Big's backyard, be the last person standing there. Yeah, that's my biggest goal. It's a huge goal. It's very crazy to wrap your mind around it, and the degree of competition is going to be there again. But hey, that's where that's where I'm putting my passion and energy.
Sure.
So Barclay is, to me, sort of an interesting class of study on these skill sets that I still have not mastered and areas that I can grow. So I like Barclay because it offers an opportunity for growth. I think that's why some people do like the backyard ultra. Like they're excited. We were talking to Adam earlier and he's going for 15 loops.
Yeah.
That's super awesome.
Huge.
Like I love that. And like, I'm going to be celebrating with those people when they make their milestones, in my mind or like verbally, I would be like, giving them cheers if I had the energy to do it. But I think that's what pulls us. I don't have to be the person that wins Barclay or finishes Barclay. But then on the other hand, well, sure, I'd love to like go and continue to like work at that. I mean, I don't think I really have a shot at getting back into Barclay next year unless I win bigs, to be honest with you, because it's so competitive to get in. There's only 40 spots.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mate, if someone looked at you on paper, they would probably say, God, if Harvey wasn't working, how much more could he achieve in terms of training and possibly be more relaxed? You'd have a lighter workload and you could just solely focus on the one thing. But what I'm sort of discovering from you is I actually think teaching helps. It helps your running in some way. I think because you've got that balance and maybe because it must keep you grounded and you do have a great sense of humility.
I think
you're not coming in all arrogant and you're very.
Thank you too.
I think it's such a good quality to have. So maybe you could explain that a bit better. How does teaching actually help your running?
Yeah,
because it seems to.
Yeah. I mean, I can see both sides of the coin, and like definitely. The teaching, it helps to build me, and where it is I have routines. So the routines are kind of crazy. A lot of times I'm like going, until like 11 PM at night. And, I know we talk about like China and like people work really hard, but I don't really think of it as work. Cause like for me, it's fun. Like, so, the things I'm doing, like, I don't really think of it. The teaching times is work, with grading papers and stuff like that. But the other things I'm involved with, like I don't look at that as work necessarily. But it's the routines help me because I have a routine with everything, with like my run commutes to my weekend. So I live half the time in Cincinnati and half the time in Circleville, which is really a rural community.
Yep.
So I live there Friday to Monday, and it's about a 2-hour drive. So I spend my weekends with my fiance, Kelly. And then on the weekdays, I'm pretty focused with teaching. I take a bit care of my mother too. She's getting up in age. And so my students, they inspire me. Like having a purpose, like for us both, it really makes me more motivated. To try to model like good health, and to try to model like the idea that anything's possible. Like like my students are typical American students. Like they have their own strengths and things that they're special about them. But sometimes, being teenagers, you can kind of think like that there's limits on life, like limits on what you can do based on your station. And so I like to like try to break that down and like try to like challenge people in their thinking like that, you know, no matter what you think based on where you grew up or what you are or your family you were born into, there's still, you know, you can do big things if you put your dreams, your mind to it, and you really have a strong work ethic.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, mate. And I think it's just so much more than just running, because when I see a running documentary, or if someone puts down a big total here over the weekend, it doesn't necessarily inspire me to put on my shoes and replicate that. Like if someone does a 100-mile run, I mean, there's some people out there who go, yeah, I want to do the same thing. They train for it and they do it, and that person inspired them. But I guess from my perspective, and I think a lot of people are in the same boat, is that it's just there's certain qualities you can take away. So like how to deal with suffering, how to deal with low points, riding the highs and the lows, persistence, and having a goal and sticking to that goal to the very end, to the finish. So I suspect with your students that they're taking lessons from you. So not every student's going to be an ultra runner or even a marathon runner, but surely they can take away these life lessons and apply it. Yeah.
It's I try really hard. I mean, I don't reach every single student in that sort of way. And certainly I'm not converting everyone to even going up and down the stairs at our school. Yeah. But it is like, no matter what they're pursuing, it's just an additional source of like, you know, a perspective that's in their lives. So it's and I get a lot of inspiration from them too. So I mean, when I do like bigs, for example, my students will write, if they want to, they can write a message for me on a note card. And then like if I'm really deep into the race, I go through a low point, my crew member Judd, he can hand me like one of those cards, and you know, someone says something to me and it's like, wow, okay, that uplifts me. So those relationships really, you know, are a value. I definitely value. And it is there are times I think like, oh yeah, it'd be nice to just be focused on running. Yeah, I could like focus on you know, going to the gym, lifting some more weights, going to sauna more, going hot tub and things like that. But you know, I'm pretty grateful for all the things I have right now, and I couldn't ask for more.
It's interesting, Harvey, because you know, if you're a professional NFL player, you can't have a second job. If you're a professional NBA player, it's impossible to have a second job, right? Like that's it. So, you know, there must be so few ultra runners who can actually make a full-time living. I guess you need a big sponsorship deal.
Yeah.
And it's funny how you can be at the peak of your sport, and even to this day, it's still quite tricky to pay the bills.
Oh yeah.
There's only a handful of people, maybe like Courtney. And
Courtney's really phenomenal with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I
mean,
wonder.
And you have like people like Rich Roll who really like expanded what they were doing with their athleticism and create a whole podcast and network. But yeah, for me, it's like I'm definitely like I guess you could call me a semi-professional runner, because I do have sponsors, but I couldn't like quit my day job still, like and like live with the same quality of life. So maybe I could work harder in that category, that domain, but it's kind of what's neat about our sport too. It's not like entirely monopolized by commercialism. Yeah. You know, and it's like when I first started running ultras back in '96, it was so gritty and grassroots. You know, I'm not sure. I don't remember anyone being sponsored back then. Like maybe it was like limited. Yeah, very limited. So like the amount of sponsored athletes has grown. And like, even like in my state, we have, Arlen is a phenomenal runner, and it's really nice, really interesting. He's a Mennonite, and, you know, he went from like, you know, working on, paving, as his, profession. And this year he's now like, sponsored by Kraft, and he's like spending his time like preparing for Western States. Yeah. So, and he's just a really amazing and humble guy. Very, someone you're really so happy to see, be successful with it. But I'm not entirely opposed to maybe doing something different. I always look at, it's good to evolve as a person and grow and explore other opportunities. I always had this dream of doing a travel show, with ultras, or Steve Irwin, the Crocodile Hunter.
Yeah.
Just be super, it take people to these amazing places, talk about, just the environment, the people, the race. Yeah.
Mate, I think a network should pick that up. For sure.
That would be my dream. So if I had that opportunity, because then I could reach young people on a whole nother level. That would be much more.
Be like Anthony Bourdain, but yeah, because this morning I took you out and we got some cattle in, and it's just those little experiences which would obviously add to your. Oh yeah. You're here for the event. You're here to race.
Absolutely.
But the little
culture
things
is everything. To me, it's the race is a race, but it's also all the details.
Yeah.
The land here, the people, meeting your parents, talking to people already, and I'm so excited to see the other runners. They're going to be coming here today. It's going to be so nice, and getting to run with the cows a little bit. So I'm really hoping that they'll join in the running with me a little bit.
Exactly.
All of us.
Mate, where do you see this sport heading, ultra running? Because, it's probably easier to make, if you're a professional marathon runner, it's easy to make a living full time, right? Because of these big events.
Right.
But for ultra running, do you see it becoming more commercial? Do you see, what if a network got involved and said, they looked at something like Biggs? I'm not sure if Laz would allow it and if it would wreck the feel of the event, but what if a network came along and said, we're going to do live coverage and put this on TV?
Yeah.
I think it would be a big hit, but at the same time, it's it's a grassroots event. Would we be losing something? I know with this event, mate, when I first started, in my head, it was let's try to get some big sponsors. So
yeah.
I'm contacting Red Bull. I'm contacting all these big, shoe brands, and eventually we did nail a big one. But I sort of I changed my mind about that. Didn't have such a good experience. And talking with runners, they don't want big sponsorships. They prefer just to look at the old barns and have the old school feeling. And time slows down. They're getting away from their busy lives. They don't want that. They don't like that commercial.
They want helicopters flying over.
No, exactly. Right, no. But it's sort of,
we could just leave that for the 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning.
Exactly.
Do
you think it's inevitable for the sport to is it going to become more professionalized, or do you think that will happen, or do you think it can remain intact? Should it be this sort of grassroots? It's almost. I'm not sure if fringe is the right word, but it's definitely, it's a smaller community, isn't it?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that heading, I'm talking 10, 20 years?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, it's, I think it should always be accessible to people, and that's a big thing. So whether no matter what someone's performance level is, so that's a really nice aspect. And, if we're able to draw more people in to the event, to running and doing something physical with their lives, I think there's a lot of positive externalities from your mental health. Running is really good for mental health and it's free. It's so good for you to get out into nature. So I think that you can still have a lot of different types of marathons out there. They may have the New York Marathon. You can have a little tiny marathon in some far off place in the middle of nowhere. So with ultras, I think it's possible that you could end up having some world championship event that's covered on ESPN.
Yeah.
And then but at the same time, what I would hate to see is if there's steroids or some sort of illegal performance drugs, or people get into other types of mentalities that they're willing to win at any cost. Like that's where our sport has been, had no incentive to be anything but clean, and is not a part of our sport. But now you see, like, with the growing amount of money in the sport, that it's not impossible to find that in some cases. So like that's something that would be my biggest concern. And I think at that point you really need like I talked to Laz about that, and he told me that this year he's planning to do like a drug test at the end of the race, or somehow he's planning to do that. I'm not sure if that was what he told me last summer, because we had a conversation about this, and but I'm not, I would like to see that in major races, like more frequent, like, so it doesn't have to be in every single race, but like just in like maybe like the UTMB, Western States, Badwater, Bigs, or 24-hour World Championship race. We already do that, like in the those World Championship races involving like the 50K, 100K, and 24-hour race. We already have that as part of our component. But I think that's like a level measure of security to ensure that the sport remains has integrity, and like that's real important.
Exactly. Otherwise, it's like bodybuilding in the 80s.
Right.
You don't want that, and you don't want perception.
That too. Yeah.
And it's sort of, we can't pretend that it doesn't happen, and even though there isn't big prize money, like, it's not like I'm saying the last one standing gets $50,000.
Right.
But it's the notoriety. It's
sure. Yeah.
And if you look at countries versus countries, there's a lot on the line.
Yeah.
And yeah, mate. I mean, we've got a drugs policy here, and we're trying to really clamp down on the use of painkillers.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, we've got a policy in the waiver, so
that's good. I'm glad you put that in there.
Yeah.
For me personally, like, I have never taken a painkiller in any of my ultras ever.
Yeah,
any running event.
I take my health to you.
Yeah, it's like I think it's actually bad for a couple reasons. One, it's bad for people because you can actually do like long-term damage to your organs.
Yeah.
And I think that's the number one reason, like, why people shouldn't be doing it. I mean, and it's common in ultras. You will find people like, taking, Advil, Tylenol, all those things.
Yeah.
I can't tell people not to do that. Like, most races don't actually like exclude that. In fact, I'm not sure of any race I've ran this year where they have that as a mark. But I also don't see it like used all the time. But like, if I'm running a 24-hour race or a backyard ultra, it's possible that could be happening. It doesn't make sense to me. Like, I think that if you're feeling that much discomfort that you can't go on, then your body's telling you something that you should stop.
You should stop. You should pull out.
Like if you, so I mean, I may be in the minority. I'm not sure. I appreciate your stance on that.
I'm with you 100%.
Like, I just think that it's not healthy for your body. And I'd also think like that it's also a component to the race. Like, you're kind of like, I don't know. I think there's other ways you could like lessen your discomfort, like mentally with meditating or listening to some music or something like that.
Yeah.
Mate,
like it's, I've got this drugs policy. It's more of a general policy, so we're not actually doing a urine test, but it's something I probably will investigate down the track. And, I'm not going to be searching through people's gear. I don't have police powers.
No.
But it's just about putting the policy out there and saying, look, if you do take these painkillers, you are doing something wrong. Right. Just like if you take a shortcut on the course, it's against the rules. You're doing something wrong. Right. And there's two big risks I see. Is one, you've got the unfair advantage. So if let's say you're 40, 50 yards deep, and then you take some... you take something like an oxy or some kind of painkiller, that you can feel like a new runner, and you could be in a mental low and physical low, and all of a sudden both those things change, and all of a sudden you're running freely. But the
and you can get that same thing by just some food you eat, certain food you eat. You're getting good pump of energy with the food.
Have a Red Bull.
And also just like sometimes is like for example, my partner Kelly, if she calls while I'm in the midst of a race, like at some point, I get that lift like that. You know?
Exactly.
It's like you get that lift. You can get it like without that. Yeah.
But the second point, Harvey, is the medical risk, because if you're fatigued, you're not thinking straight, you could pop one pill, you could pop another pill, and you could just not be thinking straight. And as you said, you can have organ failure. So
yeah, it's super dangerous.
From an insurance point of view and a like a duty of care point of view,
right.
I don't really want people taking these painkillers. If you're on a prescription for whatever, that's fine. But if you're just going through the medicine cabinet and trying to find, you had an operation a year ago or 2 years ago, and you're just bringing that to the event,
would not be good.
That's called prescription misuse. And
I
I think
would not be good.
That has to be a bad thing for the sport.
Yeah. So hopefully, I think that the vast majority of runners that are in our community, want to ensure that ultra running remains like the special sport it is.
Yeah.
What makes it special is the organicness about it, like that. So it's I mean, it's grown a lot in the last 27 years.
Oh yeah.
And imagine 20 next 20 years where it's gonna go. Especially this backyard ultra stuff. I mean, that is just soared. Like I did the first one in 2017, and the only place was at Biggs.
Yeah.
At Laz's backyard. And now to see it in like over 50 countries, I don't know.
I think it's hundreds now, mate.
Yeah,
I think there's hundreds. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
I wouldn't doubt it. It's definitely grown.
Yeah. Mate, let's take a quick break.
Sure.
And I'll grab a coffee and we'll come back.
Our Dead Cow Gully documentary has amassed 100,000 views. That is absolutely crazy. But look, it's not surprising in a sense, because it's a beautiful doco which captures the spirit of the gully and inspires people to go out for a run and push their limits. While we love putting out that content, it does cost us some money. We think it's worth the expense, but you can actually help us out. All you have to do is subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's just one click and it's free, so there is no cost. If we can get more subscribers to our channel, we can monetize and get paid through YouTube advertisements. This will help us pay for future podcasts and documentaries. So please hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much.
Now we are back, and I've got a coffee, and hopefully this will wake me up. Mate, I want to be honest with you. I have issues sleeping before a big event, because it's like, I had a chat with you off camera about this, I think yesterday. It's like my body and my mind is preparing for something big.
Right.
And I just can't, I try to meditate, and I can meditate when life is pretty cruisy and things are going well. But when I just sort of feel like something big's coming, I can see Harvey Lewis is flying in, and there's the NZ7 are flying in, and then people are driving up from Adelaide to come here. And I just sort of find it really difficult those a few days before the event. Like I barely got any sleep last night.
Yeah.
And I'm not just having a whinge here. What about you? If you know a big event's coming up, a big total, how do you get that quality sleep? How do you lock in that quality sleep before an event? Because I think that must be crucial to actually bank in some good night's sleep. Otherwise, if you're starting off at a deficit, it's going to be almost impossible to get a huge total.
Yeah. It's like the whole. Okay, well, for me personally, like the whole week leading up, I'm like really focused in on sleep, so that I know that once I get to the night before, like if I didn't even sleep at all, like I've had such amazing sleep all the way up to this point, I'll be good sailing. And it's kind of amazing. Like Johan Steen, a really phenomenal person and runner from Sweden. He won Big's Backyard in I think 2019 it was, or no, 2018, maybe it was 2018.
Yeah.
And he won it with the most crazy circumstances. His flight got in, and he had no flight from like DC to Tennessee, and he drove all the way to Tennessee overnight. He may have slept for an hour or so.
He got pulled over by a police officer on the way.
Yeah. You heard of that?
Yeah, I've heard this. Yeah, I've watched a little clip on this.
Yeah, and that's not easy either, because I did a 100-mile race like that down in Long Haul 100. And basically my flight was canceled in Cincinnati, and I got to the flight like at like 5 p.m. And I wanted to get to Florida, which was like a 13-hour drive. So I just got in my car, and like this was like a year ago, this from January, and I drove down there. I felt fine, and maybe stopped for like a little 20-minute nap somewhere along the way, and then I just got like a 40-minute nap when I got to the parking area, and then started the race that next morning. But I really got so excited about Badwater. Like back in the day, that was my apex like race. Like that was a race I dreamed about year round. And in 2013, I really started to really hone myself to prepare for that race. And I mean, I ran it the first time in 2011. And at that point, I wasn't winning like races at like a national level. I mean, I was starting to build. But going into 2013, I could not sleep at all the night before the race.
Wow.
I mean,
nothing.
I got up at like 3 a.m. and I like went to the buffet. I mean, I'm like just goofy stuff. Or what? Yeah, it was like I just could not sleep. I was so wound up, so excited. So even though I seem really excited right now, I'm actually suppressing my energy. Like I'm actually, this is not as excited as I actually am. Like I try to like keep myself calm and like relaxed. But the other thing is like I have a whole system now. So in 2014, I went back to Badwater. In 13, I think I finished 4th in the race. And I know like had I done better with my sleep, I would have probably ran stronger as well. But in 2014, I went back and I did a different system and I won the race. And so part of my system is I have a rule about like keeping things like sort of routines. So like tonight I'll go to bed by 9 p.m. at the latest, maybe even like 8:30. And I'll probably get up and use the restroom a couple of times in the middle of the night, maybe, who knows. But I also like, I take my electronics and I purposely turn them off or put them like in another space. Because when you're someone like us, that we're kind of into social media too.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be like maybe as much as I am, but it's kind of part of like, trying to like make an impact and reaching people, as well. So I purposely don't interact like with social media beyond like I'll turn my phone off or put it far out of sight. And that's one.
Yeah.
Hot bath with Epsom salt. Like that really is super great. Help to put you to sleep. Like,
we do have a bath out in the barn there, mate, actually.
I'm like, try that out.
There's a bathtub there.
Seriously?
There is.
Oh, are you serious? Really?
But it's just...
Is it warm water or is it cold?
It's not connected to anything. It's just a bath.
Okay, there we go.
It's probably better for an ice bath.
Well, you could do the shower. But a hot bath, it really does help to relax you.
So, mate, it's pretty smart what you do. We just had a chat to Tracy Outlaw in the break. So you hand over your social media to Tracy.
Yeah.
So you don't have to deal with it. So you can just focus on the event, and he's posting on your behalf.
Yeah, so, I never talk about this really, but most people I think are aware of it. Like, because Tracy always, whenever he posts on my social media, he puts his name like at the bottom, so people understand that it's not coming from me. But it's really something we started back, truthfully, a decade or so ago, a long time ago. We've been doing that. I guess it's going back to, I take that back. We started doing that in Arrowhead 135, like 2013 or 16.
Yeah.
So we've been doing that together for like 7 years, maybe a little longer. Cause I do remember he has a nephew that had cancer, and we were doing this thing with Flat Parker, where he would take Flat Parker and give it to people to go all around the world. And so that was back in 2014. I took Flat Parker to Portugal with me.
Can you say that again? What's that?
Flat Parker.
What's a Flat Parker?
Flat Parker is like this little drawn out, like little character that you just take him places and you get pictures with him, and then you can share it back to his nephew.
Oh, sure.
So it was really part of his like therapeutic in a way to get to travel all the world, and all these people were like sharing back, Parker, look at this. So that was pretty neat. I mean, Tracy's a very giving person and very generous. He's also really into like philanthropy. So like when I went for like the fastest known time from like the lowest to highest place in the lower 48, we did it for the City Gospel Mission, and like he helped to get the momentum going with that. So we were able to raise like over $10,000 with everyone's help. Wow. Yeah, which was pretty neat for a homeless shelter in Cincinnati. And so his heart is really, I mean, Tracy doesn't get paid for this. Like it's his passion. Like he's been doing this since he was in high school. Like he loves like sports. So he, from that, he actually took over our 24-hour USA team social media page. And he manages that, and he does a really good job with that.
He's very good, mate. He's actually, I think that the trick with social media, and what I've learned over time, and Tracy's so good at this, is how do you tell the narrative? You don't just want to put up the results. Like Harvey's just completed 40. You want to paint the narrative. You want to set the drama, set the scene and the feeling of what it's like in the camp and out on the course, and you need a good photo, but it needs to be matched with text, which is not just the result, but a narrative that people can kind of emotionally invest in. I think that's the key word. Yeah. Tracy's good at that.
He's really good. And the only other person that I see is just absolutely brilliant and the best in the world at it is Laz himself. Honestly, like going back to 2017, we were doing that backyard. I mean, it started off as like a small event. And at that point in time, the record was 200 miles. And Guillaume, a French runner, and we outlasted the field an additional day. It went beyond the record. And it was, no one expected at that time, it was still so novel. It was still such a new thing. People were just blown away that it was even possible to go as far as we were going. And Laz was just an amazing poet. He's writing every hour these updates of people just crash and burn or some other experience over here, and just adding humor and the human experience to it and capturing it in a way that is totally unique.
It's genius. He's genius. He's a poet. He's a philosopher, and you need to be able to create that drama too with your posts. So. Yeah, he's good at that. Now, mate, let's just get into it before we end this. I have to check out the registrations as people start to come in.
Right.
Backyard Ultra. What if someone has never done one before and they sort of say, there's no way I can compete with Harvey Lewis. There's some big names here. It would be embarrassing just to turn up. I've got no business being here. I can probably only do 2 or 3 loops. What's the point in even turning up or even putting in a registration for a Backyard Ultra? What would you say to that? 1, the intimidation factor, and 2, why should a regular runner give it a go?
Is it Steve Young?
Cliff Young.
I'm sorry.
Cliff.
I'm gonna. Oh geez, Cliff Young. I mean, that's half of the thing that comes to my mind. Cliff Young is someone. Yeah. I apologize for messing up his name, but I know the story very well. And I mean, it's just inspiring that someone from nowhere came in running with boots on and jeans or overalls, and it manages to outdo all these big name runners and run in a way that no one ever dreamed possible.
So just for listeners who don't know, Cliff Young, he was in his 50s. I think he was probably his late 50s.
Late 50s,
and he enters this event. It was a event from Sydney to Melbourne. It was a road race, and it was from one Westfield shopping centre to the next. It's just like a shopping centre in Australia. And iconic. And he went to register, and there's all these hot shots and all their gear, and he turns up looking really daggy. He's just a farmer. I think he's a dairy farmer or potato farmer. And everyone looked down on him, one, because of his age, two, they thought, what business does this guy have in this event? He's not going to last a day.
Right.
And anyway, the big thing with Cliff is he's got a certain style of running where he keeps his feet really low to the ground. It's like a caterpillar. It's a very energy efficient way of running. And he's not running hard, but it's consistent. And all the other runners, they started the race and they all did like a 14 or 16 hour day, and they have their 8 hours sleep because it's important. But no one told Cliff that you had to stop for sleep, and he just kept on going. He kept on going, and the others, I think it was by mistake. I think he did plan to sleep, but his crew stuffed up the time, and he thought he'd slept for hours, but it was only like 30 minutes or something. And he gets up and goes. And the other guys, they have their 8 hours sleep, and they're having their breakfast. They're about to take off, and they hear that Cliffy Young is at least 30 Ks ahead of them. And they're like, what the hell's going on? And then it was, how can this old guy sustain this? He's got to crash and burn. But he didn't. He just kept on going, and he didn't sleep. We had very little sleep. And he won it, and he became like an Australian folk hero. Like
legend.
People were lined on the streets, and it was the tortoise and hare story. Yeah. It's inspiring stuff.
Absolutely inspiring. Yeah. I love that story. I mean, it's like a Terry Fox story.
Yeah.
I mean, Cliff Young, legendary, And so I feel like that's really can't get any better than that. Like when you think about like just the call to like experiment and to try to do your best, and it's if I'm going out to an ultra where it has a defined distance, my goal might be to try to win the race, but no matter what, I want to just finish. Even if I'm like the last person. So I don't mind that. Like I think there's great. I admire a lot of times the person finished last just as much as the person finished first, because it takes a lot of energy and guts to get out there and to do that. So I mean, if you never have done a backyard ultra, it's a fun format because it sort of has like a festival like feel to it. I mean, all the runners are running in the same lap every lap, whether there's someone that expects to go for days, or someone would like to try to make a lap or make a half marathon or a marathon or the first ultra, first 100-mile race. I mean, that's be quite exciting. We'll see, how many people in this race make a new PR. I mean, that'd be pretty amazing to see how many people will. You can. So it's a great event to, like, if you want to try to push yourself and see how far you can go. And then do that in a way that you're interacting with people, you're having fun, you get to eat a lot of food and have great drinks throughout the race.
If someone put you on the spot, Harvey, and said, for most people, what makes sense, a quick loop or a slow loop? Like, what's the most energy efficient way of doing this? Is it a quick loop so you can have a bigger rest and off your feet with you lean back in your chair, or do you just really drag it out and keep your heart rate low? Or do you think it just depends on each runner, what their natural pace is? Like, what advice would you give to people there?
Yeah, a little bit depends on people's personal, like where they are personally. That influences things a bit. Also, the course, like, so what I run in a lap in Biggs, it will be definitely different than here. But I don't know what the magic number is here. So I'll be experimenting with that and studying every single inch. I get to know, I'm gonna try to know the place pretty darn well.
So tomorrow, are you going to play around with different times to see what feels
not
what feels
too much,
right?
like a little bit maybe, but not a lot. Like, I just go at like a nice and, Cliff-like pace.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I really want to get Cliff Young's pace, to be honest with you.
Well, mate, I've seen some people at this event. So this is This is like the third year I've done this event now, and I see people that they come in at consistent times.
Right.
So it could be like a 48-minute loop or a 50-minute loop.
Yeah.
They come in consistently, but then they do a loop that's a little bit slower.
Right.
And all of a sudden, mentally, it changes for them. Their whole face changes, and they're really troubled by that slower loop.
Yeah.
And they might, for whatever reason, it was a slower loop.
Yeah.
But in their mind, it's like it's just a matter of time before I just time out, and they can really get rattled by a slower loop.
Right.
How can you, if you do have a bad loop, how can you recover? Like how can you psychologically stay in the game and just say, hey, I had a bad loop. It doesn't mean that every loop from here onwards is going to be a bad loop.
Yeah. It's a really good, you're starting to be a real teacher of the sport. Like you really, because you get to study this by being a race director. You get to know it as well as anyone that's running a race. But for me personally, it would. I don't really think of there's just no bad loops. There's no such thing as a bad loop.
Sure.
If you're continuing, there's a good loop. There's no such thing as a bad loop. But I understand, like if you're in a real slow loop, then you just have to like have that mindset that there are always going to be valleys and mountains, in anything in life. And this is like a microcosm of life itself. Mm-hmm. It's like, it's like a microcosm of life. I look at it in a way. And just each of these yards could be a representative of a day in our life.
Yeah.
Or, and like you might have a yard which is like you're feeling really rough and you're like, man, I don't know if I could keep going.
Yeah.
And you have to find the way to move beyond that simple spot and just to focus on that very point you're in at that moment in time and not think forward to like 2 or 3 or any more further down the road.
Yeah. So just focus on the here and now.
One exact like yard at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you also think, mate, that you don't actually have to put a label on it? You don't have to say this is a good loop, this is a bad loop. Like you don't even have to make that judgment. If you've come back and you've made it in time, that's just it. So do you think just you shouldn't be labeling these loops? You just have to accept there's going to be faster loops, slower loops. Who cares?
Just grateful that you made another loop. That's it. Yeah, that's just grateful. You just keep adding up to the investment in the depositing and the investing. You just keep on doing that. So it's you got to be proud of whatever you are able to do if you give it your best effort. So like that's always my mantra in running and ultras is like I will go out and try to do my very best and like I may try to like win a race, but if I give my very best effort and I come up short, then that's okay as long as I didn't as long as I 100% gave my best effort.
Yeah.
Then it's okay. Yeah. It's a good question. Like, so let's say when I ran with Courtney in 2020, I ended up, thinking further down the road. Like I lost my focus on just the simple yard I was on. And I started thinking, I'm not sure I could survive in 2 yards from now or 3 yards from now. Sure. And then maybe I can't do this yard, and so I psyched myself out. Yeah. And going in 2021, I was like, okay, well, it may happen that I time out, but I'm not going to time out because my mind, it'll be because my body won't enable me to continue at making it 60 minutes. Mm-hmm. So we may look really beat up and I may look really, you may be like, man, I feel like we should pull them off the course. Don't worry. It's all right. It's all managed.
Okay. Okay.
So there you go. You got me on camera saying it too.
Side,
right there. Yeah. So I am responsible for myself.
You've got life insurance?
Yeah. Well, a little bit in teaching. That is small amount.
So mate, how I was talking about, I find it really hard to sleep when I know there's a big event happening. And a lot of it is down to me with getting the course ready and the signage and communicating with people and just organising everyone. So I find it impossible to get a good night's sleep a couple of days beforehand. How do you sleep when you know those whistles are going to come? So in the later stages, there must be a feeling of dread because you know those whistles are coming. Your body and your mind knows it. The bell. Well, it's the whistles before the bell, but just like I have issues sleeping before an event.
Yeah.
How can you possibly get some sleep when you know those whistles are coming? Like your body would just be recoiling.
Well, one challenge is having like a system. So if you're coming out and you're doing like a day or more is your goal, and you don't have a crew member, then you have to have something set on your alarm. You know, like with your phone. You know, I know a lot of us here are going to have crew members. Unfortunately, you know, like having a crew member you trust is, I think, very important too. To like know that they're going to wake you up with like 2 minutes to go or 3 minutes to go. So I think that's really important because then it kind of eases your anxiety that might exist about getting back up.
So you trust them, and you can relax and just
a little bit more. See, but I have to be honest, like even like Judd is my number one go-to guy, and he comes with me to Biggs and he comes with me to Badwater, and Sam is a very good friend of mine, but I don't I will do my best to like have that, you know, same degree of trust with Sam, but I have like a tremendous amount of trust with like Judd. You know, it's like just, you know, so with Sam, I'll or if we have someone who's subbing in to crew later in the race, you know, it's just something. It's like, oh yeah, I just have to make sure that I wake up with 2 or 3 minutes to go, so I can, you know, run up to the start line or something, right?
I have seen this. There was a runner last year, Jessica Smith. So she just had one crew member and her partner, and he was very tired. And the question is, like, you've got the competitor who's doing the race, but who's looking after the crew? Because if the crew gets fatigued, you're kind of in all sorts of trouble. And unfortunately, he fell asleep and she missed the bell. So they were both asleep and they missed the whistles, and it was a devastating moment because she was in top physical health and she had the Australian female record, and there's a lot of hope about breaking that record. And she was the first one to get knocked out because I think ideally you need 2 crew to have shifts, right? And you need to sleep. The crew needs to sleep at some point, right? That's
like Judd. He does it all himself.
Wow.
Yeah, he's phenomenal.
Does he just sleep between loops?
He sleeps between loops. He also works as like a DJ and event organizer. So it's like for him, it's like just automatic. And Sam is phenomenal too. He brings his own set of strengths. Like he's a vegan. He makes all kinds of great vegan foods. But it's something that I know I have to make sure that I'm thinking checks and balances as well. So there's always checks and balances happening between myself, the runner, and whoever my crew is. So we're checking and balancing each other, you know, back and forth. This is a government teacher, me talking, you know, also just laying down, even if you don't fall asleep, has beneficial impacts on you.
Yeah. Like
in terms of your ability to like sort of heal and like reset.
Are you focusing on the breath, or are you saying a mantra in your head?
Well, one of the things we do at Biggs is there's a big giant hill before we get to the, it's not that big, but it's big in terms of backyards and when you're doing this a million times, but it's before the camp. And so many of the runners, we kind of like will walk it in like the last 50 meters or 100 meters to try to get our heart rate down a little bit before you like lay down. So you could try that. Typically, I try not to consume a lot of caffeine like the first night. And then the second or third night is like a wrestling match, because you're like, on one end, you want to have like caffeine, keep yourself going. On the other end, you might not want the caffeine so you can get some sleep. So it's really a study in the human body. Like, you know what I mean? Like I started reading about this stuff, and like the longest people have gone without sleep is like 12 days or something. They did these like sort of possibly abusive sleep studies back in like the 60s. I don't think they really do that anymore. But yeah, it's kind of an interesting aspect, of the race, and trying, keeping your mind strong while you're putting pressures of like sleep deprivation and, energy usage, all these other things going. So yeah, just trying to control your thoughts, like trying to focus your mind on things that will make you less anxious.
Is your strategy for tomorrow, or maybe you shouldn't give this away, but I guess this won't be out till after the event.
Yeah, it's not live, is it?
No. Is your strategy to try to get some sleep early on, like in that first night? Because do you think there's less pressure in that first 24 hours for you? And you can maybe hopefully...
I would just always try to get sleep.
Okay.
Every night.
Even during the day, or just...
Nah, probably not in the day, but maybe a couple little like late naps,
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely like at nighttime, throughout the whole event. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, mate, I won't hold you up. We're both busy. We've got things to do, but
it's been such an absolute joy to be here.
Thanks,
and,
mate.
I love this stuff. It's like, for me, it's like opening up a new book that I've never even touched before.
That's very kind of you, mate. Like I couldn't believe actually that you responded to my message. I think you must have seen the documentary, and that might have.
No, you showed me that afterwards.
Oh, after, yeah.
And that was really well done.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
I'm excited that you got Dan out here this year.
We're doing another one.
Yeah,
mate. So it'll be pretty epic, and it's an honour having you here, mate. And if I'm ever in Cincinnati, mate, maybe we can run around the block a few times.
You're absolutely invited to my home in Ohio, 100%. And yeah, I'd love to have you.
Thanks, mate. Good luck tomorrow.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Cheers.